Okay, here we are. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We do have almost 300 people registered for this webinar, so there's definitely curiosity and people want to learn more about it. So I'm super grateful to see those numbers. If we've never met before, I'm Nama Blonder. I put this webinar together. You're welcome. And I invited my colleagues from the industry to speak to the parts that I can't speak to as an architect and planner, and B, I didn't know and I wanted to learn about. And usually, like, these are pretty good cues that probably there are other people out there who have the same questions as I do. So we have 4 speakers today, including myself. Maya Borgen, you will help me. I think I did pretty well. From SHS Consulting, then Alwyn Bennett from New Commons Development. Oh, there is someone accidentally joining on I don't know who this person is. Okay. Okay. Okay, the person that is just logged in as me, I don't know what happened. Okay. Yes, thank you very much. But if I kicked myself, I couldn't come back. So thank you. Okay. And Owen Bennett from New Common Development and Lee Scott from Element 5. Each of us will cover different parts of the sequence, and each of us will have 15 minutes, and we will go right after the other, and we'll have Q&A at the end. Okay, so Maya, take it from here.
Thanks, Nama. All right, I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nama. Really excited to be here. Thanks for organizing this today. I'm Maya Borgenicht. I am principal in the real estate development group at SHS Consulting. So just a very brief moment about SHS for anyone who's not doesn't know our firm. So we work exclusively in affordable housing. The group that I work in is the Housing Development Group. So we act as development consultants primarily for nonprofits building affordable housing. We also have 2 other groups, Policy and Research, a group that works a lot with municipalities, doing housing needs assessments, demographic research, general policy work, and then Business Innovation, like a lot of CMHC solution labs, et cetera. So I won't do a deep dive, but I think we're exclusively working in affordable housing and get a lot of cross-pollination from all of the different groups here. So the piece that I'm going to cover today is kind of early feasibility and really the funding and financials. So a lot of the groups we work with, especially in the kind of early part of feasibility study, a key question that they have is, okay, how do we understand if we have a project here? How do we understand, what does it look like to get a project funded? What is a financially viable project? And kind of understanding how we approach that kind of key question. What are the key levers that impact project viability? What funding is available? How do you fund pre-development work to kind of get to the part where you're actually going through development, which is what Alwyn's going to talk about after me. So this is just a very high level, not diving deep. This isn't a kind of deep pro forma 101, but just kind of understanding how you might approach thinking about that financial viability and what the kind of key pieces are there. So what that really means is what is the pro forma? So the pro forma is the financial model that we use to really assess project viability, both at the outset for kind of early feasibility of a project, and then of course tracking all the way through pre-development and into kind of the actual construction of a project. So the pro forma essentially is a financial model that calculates hard and soft capital costs, calculates capital contributions, so grants, equity, et cetera. What are the revenues that would be coming into the housing project? What are the expenses? And then what mortgage can it support? And ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're testing the question of financial viability, we're basically saying, with all of the costs to build the building, with the money that's coming to the table to do that, and then with the mortgage that your revenue can support after expenses, are you breaking even? And is there a financially viable project there? So on the kind of first part of that is, okay, what are you going to build? So you come to this kind of stage with, okay, we've got maybe a piece of land. We're looking to intensify one of our sites, and, maybe talk to an architect, kind of have an idea of, okay, we can build a project of X number of units, but what does that look like? How much affordability can we get? What is the project that we're really looking at here? So from that kind of starting point, when we have at least a very high level idea of what the physical form is, then we kind of go through and say, okay, we can look at a mix of affordable housing and market housing. So market housing, of course, is kind of, can be what the market would command for those units. Affordable housing can have a bunch of different definitions, and it really depends on, what your geography is, what funder you're looking at. The City of Toronto has their own income-based definition. CMHC uses 80% of MMR, median market rent, and then different municipalities. So it's generally kind of around or below 100% average or median market rent, but there's a bunch of different lenses there. So then what we'll do is, really say, okay, so now how do we think about what the mix might be for the units in this project? So what are the relevant funder requirements? Funders for affordable housing will generally say you need to have X% of your units under X% of AMR, so on and so forth. So bringing that lens. What are the organizational priorities? Does your organization serve seniors? And that's going to kind of bring one lens to what the unit mix and rents would be like. Do you want to have a mixed market and affordable building, et cetera? And then, obviously overall project viability. So do you need more market units to make the project work, and kind of have enough revenue to support the mortgage or not? We'll usually in a feasibility stage run a bunch of different scenarios because you can toggle all of those different things, and come out with different outcomes. And I think one thing that has come up a lot recently in projects that we're working on is the market unit cross subsidization. And I think some of our clients come to us and say, we'll just add more market units and that'll really make the thing work, make the thing viable. But given, some of the increased grants for affordable housing that have come recently to the table and the increased cost of building, it's not always a given that market units will really cross subsidize everything. And then from there, there's, kind of looking at the rest of the operating budget. So rent supplements, which make up the difference between what a tenant can pay and kind of what the revenue is needed for the project in terms of standard affordability, what the expenses are. And then I think a key thing that I always like to keep in mind is when you're looking at a project, you're looking how much does it cost to build? How much can we bring to the table in terms of capital contributions? But every dollar that you either bring in more revenue or reduce in expenses is really magnified in terms of what mortgage the project can actually support. So there's so many different levers that can really impact project viability. So once you kind of have, okay, these are our hypothetical revenue sources, you really need to look at, okay, what's it going to cost to build the building? So that, of course, is in two different buckets. So soft costs, so, hiring an architect, maybe you're going to have a development consultant if you don't have that kind of function in-house to really help bring the project to life and see it through construction. Fees and permits, so development charges, building permit, zoning approvals, et cetera. And then the hard costs, what it actually costs to build the building. So the base construction cost, and then contingency and escalation. And all of these things in early feasibility, you'll start with benchmarks, you'll start with kind of a high level costing report from a cost consultant perhaps, and then they get refined and kind of a greater level of certainty as you go through the entire development process and kind of are updated and tracked. So then, of course, it's what funding can we bring to the table? This is again super specific in terms of where you are in in the city, in the province, etc. But in Ontario, at least, the main sources of funding are really municipalities and then the federal government. So in terms of the federal government, CMHC, the Affordable Housing Fund. Right now, the current version of the program allows CMHC to grant up to 40% of project costs for affordable housing. I think that's a lot higher than we generally see on projects. It's, the previous version as of last November was 75,000 a unit, and I think that's what we would probably expect to see. I'm not going to dive too deep into CMHC affordable housing, given the upcoming likelihood of a federal election and the possibility of a government change. I think I can almost guarantee that anything I would say on the specifics of CMHC granting are likely to be irrelevant in a few months. On the municipal side, again, it's super dependent on where you are. The City of Toronto has recently come out with um, kind of an announcement of a program to come where they will offer up to 260,000 in grants per unit, which is really high and a lot higher than we see in other municipalities and a lot higher than we saw in the City of Toronto Open Door program when I think the last call was 2021. And then regions outside of Toronto, but still in the GTA, generally will grant through the OFI program or other calls for applications. And again, I think it's challenging because there's not kind of a standard answer on where are the different pots you can get. It's really specific to the area you're in, but there are definitely a lot of options. Right now, the province really isn't at the table in kind of capital dollars for affordable housing. There are also, of course, other things we look at. Green funding, FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, has a lot of great programs if you're looking at higher levels of sustainability and energy efficiency. And then HST rebates, both the province and the feds have provided 100% GST and PST rebates for purpose-built rental, which is definitely quite helpful on the pro forma. So another, kind of once you've figured out, all right, if say you found the money to do a kind of feasibility study, you've done an initial pro forma, you figured out, all right, there's something, there looks like there's something here. We could build this project, maybe make it work. A large challenge in terms of cash flow and funding is really getting from that initial point to construction, which is when your big kind of mortgage CMHC dollars will flow. They flow starting on construction start. And so those costs can really add up. It of course depends per project, but can be anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million before you get to CMHC funding. And so cash flowing that is really can be quite a challenge. There aren't a ton of there aren't necessarily a ton of programs that kind of fill that gap. There are a few. The CMHC has previously offered the seed funding program. It used to be a rolling application. Now they've gone to annual calls. The last one was last spring. We would hope there'll be one in the coming months, but haven't heard anything confirmed. And those can grant up to 150,000 in grant and 350 in loan, though a lot of the allocations tend to be smaller. The City of Toronto has a call open right now until February 28th for pre-development loans, interest-free loans up to 50,000 a unit, which is a great kind of entry into this space, helping groups kind of get from that initial feasibility to full construction. And then sometimes municipal programs, if you're able to secure the funding when you're still in that pre-development, a lot of it's advanced on signing the agreement. So that kind of, again, there's all these calculations on how can you kind of secure funding to cash flow that significant piece that takes you from feasibility all the way to construction, at which point you've basically done all of your design, gotten your building permit, which is why the cost can really add up. So I think the kind of thing that I wanted to leave everyone with is that the landscape for funding is ever changing. I feel like at any given moment there can be kind of a challenge in saying, oh, well, things are uncertain, things might not work out exactly for the project. But I think over the lifespan of an affordable housing project, things can just change so much. And it takes, in an ideal world, you kind of go from feasibility for 6 months into pre-development for, a year to 18 months straight into construction. I think that's definitely atypical. It can take a while to kind of find the right moment and the right conditions under which to actually get a project off the ground. And so I think that if you can figure out how to make it work, getting a project progressed to that shovel-ready state, so having zoning in place, kind of being closer to that building permit-ready submission is really critical because it just allows you to jump on those kind of opportunities in time that actually, where the stars align to fully fund a project and get it off the ground. So I think it's a challenging balance, but we work with our clients to kind of figure out, okay, how do we progress far enough while mitigating risk and ensuring that we're kind of being aware of what the environment is telling us about the possibilities for building affordable housing. So just kind of keeping tabs on all of that. I think a big challenge for projects right now is the uncertainty of a federal election in Ottawa and the change of new programs, because CMHC, both financing and then funding, is such a critical element to projects. And given that they won't actually kind of confirm funding or financing until you're quite far along, have a Class B costing, which is really once you're at building permit submission, means that you have to really get quite far before you're able to confirm that funding. So it's a challenging uncertainty. So that's kind of a very quick high level of what the kind of financial feasibility in the early stages of a project are, and how you might kind of start to think about it and start to think about how all those pieces fit together. So I'll just last here, just my contact, Maya Borgenicht, and then my email at SHS. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will turn it over to Olwen Bennett from New Commons. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Maya. That's great. I will share my screen. All right, there we go. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Olwen Bennett. I'm a director at New Commons Development. So in a few slides to share, but I thought I would give a little bit of an introduction to New Commons Development and how we work. I'll go through a bit of information on project phasing and the types of activities you can expect during those different phases of a project. Some high-level timelines of each of those phases, which of course, as Maya kind of mentioned, can certainly change depending on the factors. Some information on some costs, and then of course we can go through some questions after all the presentations. Whoops. So just to give you an introduction to New Commons, so we're a nonprofit development company. We're focused on building and preserving affordable housing across Canada. We typically work in partnership with other nonprofits, as well as building our own projects and working to support affordable rental housing development projects and renovations. We also work with co-ops, nonprofits, faith-based groups, municipalities. Really kind of depends, but the key really is to build lasting affordability in the nonprofit sector. So we're a team across the country now who brings real estate and affordable housing development expertise and capacity to projects. And we typically manage a project right through from early feasibility all the way through to lease up and project completion, including the funding and financing strategy and getting all the financing lined up. So at a high level, I'm going to go through these 4 phases generally of a development project. So detailed feasibility, planning and design development, construction and completion and lease up. And I've put in some timelines here, which are quite general. I've put a little plus sign beside each of them because things can really change depending on the context. And so I've made just a few notes here on each phase on some of the factors that can impact that timeline. So for instance, in the early stage, the nonprofit group's decision-making process, as well as availability of consultants, availability of funding as well, can really impact that timeline of your detailed feasibility. Once you're moving into your more detailed design and planning phase, some of the key factors really could be which municipality you're in and how quickly they're willing to move you through approvals, as well as the complexity of the project and the planning approvals. And then again, of course, the funding piece, which Maya touched on. Through construction, the scale can really make a big difference with how long this takes, as well as the construction method, which I know Lee is going to talk about more later on some options there. Also, site conditions and availability of trades are some things that can impact your timeline. And then during the last phase here, the completion and lease up, Some factors that might impact timing could be your local rental market, or your property management company, your municipality also if you're looking into rent supplements and other operating subsidies. Okay, so I'll go into a bit more detail on each of these phases. So in this early phase, this is what I call detailed feasibility, but it's really when you have sort of made that decision to try to make a project move forward. So at this point, you've already kind of established, that you would like to try to make a project move, and you're basically getting more and more detailed on your project goals and your vision. You're starting to narrow down on key risks and getting more detailed on that project viability. So that's working through your pro forma modeling and testing some of your assumptions. And this is probably also when you're applying for pre-development sources. So some of those sources that Maya mentioned that can help to cover some of these early costs. Some groups may have some like cash equity in the bank that they could put towards this early phase just to keep things moving, but that's not really common with nonprofits. So as a really high level estimated cost for this phase, we put about $50,000 to $100,000. And this is the type of activities you would expect here would be your early concept design, likely paying for a project manager or a development consultant. And this is also when you're hoping to do some site due diligence studies. So this is really to understand some of the risks that could exist for your project. So at this point, you're wanting likely to get a survey, maybe do a title search just to make sure there's nothing weird on title on your property. You're probably also looking to do an environmental site assessment, at least a phase 1 report, and that will be some research to understand any kind of environmental concerns. If there's a building on the property and you're looking to renovate, you're likely getting a detailed building condition assessment. And if you're looking to demolish a building on the property, you could also want to get a hazardous substance report here too, just to understand any risks around demolition. And then, of course, if you are purchasing land, so you don't already have a piece of land that you're putting towards this project, your upfront costs are going to be much higher. So you're likely going to need to provide a deposit at this stage while you're doing your due diligence period if you are purchasing a property. And then, so in this phase, you're looking at some of those pre-development grants and loans that Maya mentioned. So CMHC, FCM, some municipalities have some good programs. And then some groups do look to do some fundraising or use some of their own equity. So in this next phase, this is the planning and design development portion of the work. And so this is really everything from establishing feasibility and knowing that, okay, there aren't any like really huge risks to the project on the property side. And you're pretty sure you have a solid business case on the pro forma and the final financial side that you might decide to green light moving forward and really get into much more detailed design, work through your planning approvals, and get to essentially the point where you're ready to start construction. And so, yeah, this is the point where you're really getting much more detailed on your business plan. So this would include, your affordability mix, what's your operating plan for once the building is built, what's your vision for the target population that you want to serve, what kind of design do you want to do? And this kind of like business planning can also help with all of your conversations with funders because they're going to continually ask many, many questions about your project. This is when you're working with your architecture and design team to really move the design work forward from that early concept design right through to your construction drawings. So yeah, moving through kind of different phases of design work, which Nama will certainly speak to. This is when you're also working through your municipal planning approvals, likely doing community engagement to make sure that the local community understands your project and can give some feedback. And then also this is the point where you're confirming funding. So this is both making sure that you have the pre-development money, like grants and loans to get you to construction. But this is also the phase where you're going to be applying for your big construction loans and grants and making sure you can actually start construction. So the expected costs on in this phase, again, it's hard to estimate because it really does depend on the project, but you could expect anywhere from about 500,000 to over $1 million. And this includes your detailed design and engineering, various consultants that you're going to need, including your planning consultant, site studies, so things like traffic, noise, wind, vibration, all kinds of studies that you might need. This is when you're also probably going to spend some money on legal fees. You're going to need an appraisal for the property because your lender will need it. You probably also have a project manager that you're working with. And so you might be paying some ongoing fees to them. You're likely working with a cost consultant as well, who's giving you regular costing updates. I saw a question come in about the Class D costing. So this is also like the period of time where you're working from a Class D to a Class C, a B, and then finally a Class A costing. And each of those phases gets more and more detailed, more and more accurate as you're moving along. And then at this phase, you may also engage your construction manager in like some pre-development scope of work. And we found this is helpful because they really have like a view to some of the on the ground and market issues that you might come across, like labor timing issues or certain supply issues that might affect what materials you might want to use for the project. So that can be helpful as well. And then in some municipalities, you may also have municipal application fees, which can be quite substantial. Some cities will and towns will waive these for nonprofits for affordable housing. So always good to look into that before you pay any fees to your municipality, and if you can get it waived. So again, these sources of funding include pre-development, grants and loans, fundraising, and equity to get you through to the construction phase. So construction, put the timeline here at 18 to 24 months plus, but actually it could be shorter or it could be longer depending on the scale and scope of your project. Yeah, there are certainly some really good ways to shorten your construction timeline, which I know Lee will talk about. So this is really the time when you've closed on your financing. So you've got all your capital sources stacked up and ready to go. And you've signed, a contract with your construction manager and you're getting your building built. So of course the costs really depend on the design and the scale of the building. But this will include your hard costs, as Nama was talking about. So this is the actual materials and labor for the building itself, fees for your construction manager or contractor, any development charges if applicable, although Ontario now waives development charges for nonprofits, which is great. You are going to be paying your architect, quantity surveyor, so various consultants throughout construction, insurance, financing costs, and then other consultants as needed. So yeah, quite a few costs at this stage. And this is really, of course, when your costs ramp up quickly, but you've got all your sources stacked up and ready. So that's all good. And the sources of funding are often federal, provincial, municipal, grant and loan funding for nonprofits. Sometimes some projects do access more traditional loans, but it really kind of depends on the project because those will have a higher interest rate and often a shorter amortization period. So you can typically kind of achieve less affordability with a kind of more traditional bank loan. We also see some groups do, again, fundraising for their capital stack if there's a gap. The organization may also have their own equity, so some cash in the bank that they want to put in, or maybe they're selling existing properties in order to put into the new project. And then some groups also access like patient equity investment, which if anyone has any questions about it, I can certainly speak to, but this is like impact investors that might be able to come into a project and help fill a funding gap. Great. And then the last phase I wanted to speak to is this completion and lease up. So this is when your building is built, and you're actually getting tenants or co-op members moving in. And this is usually around 3 to 6 months, although again, it really depends on the project. If you've got like a long wait list of people ready to go and who are really keen on the project on the building, lease up can be just like very quick, within a month even, or a couple months. But sometimes it's a really big building or it's in a market where it might take a little bit longer to have people move in. And this is also when the operations of the building are being turned over to the owner from coming out of construction. The expected cost really, again, does depend on the project. So I didn't want to put an estimate here, but some projects will need to spend quite a bit on marketing if they've got a significant number of market units, or depending on the area and the local rental market. You're probably also going to need to spend some money on furniture for common areas and office spaces, likely some office expenses to get your system set up and getting your utilities set up. And then these are also usually the same sources that you're using during construction. So it's that same capital stack. You may also, as Maya was mentioning, you may also have operating or rent subsidies that can come in at this stage, or rent supplements, which help to deepen affordability. Great. So that was it. Thank you, everybody. Just popping my contact information there in case you want to get in touch. And I will pass it over to Nama.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Owen, for this very informative presentation. So let's kick the part about planning and designing. So again, I'm an architect and urban planner. So unlike Owen and Maya, you will also reach out to me in a pretty early stage, but we don't cover the entire development. We do the architecture and planning part of it. So I was thinking, when I put this, I reached out to those to the other speakers. I really thought of the audience to be other nonprofits that I got to work with, and I was very, very happy to see that this was much more diverse audience, with including a lot of developers and municipal teams. So it made me very happy. I just wanted to share like some of the thoughts behind the scenes. When I was thinking of what I want to say, it's less about the traditional process. Yes, you will need a building permit, it's like, but all buildings do. I wanted to think of what is the difference between the traditional market housing and when I work with nonprofits, because I myself, and maybe I should have said it in the introduction, I sit on a board of Kehila, which is an affordable housing. For almost 10 years now, I volunteer with different organizations for advocacy. So I understand nonprofit housing from the different perspective, not just as the architect. But when I was trying to really think what I could say today that will be valuable to you, I thought of three really aspects that would make a nonprofit housing different than market housing. And that is the land use planning aspect of it, the building code, things that you should know, and your users. These are like the three main buckets. And you will see me using my 1120 Ossington project as an example, which is a building that this week is getting occupancy. And I'm very super excited about it. So I will tell you more about it. So the land use planning aspect, and again, I was thinking, like trying to imagine the nonprofit organizations trying to navigate this process. So what you need to know about land use planning, and if you are operating in a specific city, which is most of the time the case, I would really recommend, this is Toronto, and this is the land use map. And I have been reached by nonprofits in the past with different land opportunities, but the expectations to what the land from an official plan perspective and policy perspective, and what the city planning directs growth and what type of growth was a very big gap. So, I was trying to think, if you're a nonprofit and you work in the same city, in the same municipality that you operate in, I would highly recommend just be high level familiar with the land use map. There's only one map to know, and you should be able to know how to look at property on the land use map. Because, for example, here in Toronto, if I was the head of a nonprofit trying to get new housing built, you need to know two colors, basically the yellow and the pink or the orange. Because if it's in the yellow, your development potential is very limited. You won't be able to get most of the time more than 4 stories. Now the city has some allowance to 6 stories, but overall, and that yellow is true across Canada. Or the pink and the more high density. So even if you would reach out to a planner in the city, and I do believe that they will be open to that, and you would ask for the 10 minutes explanation of what does those colors mean in your municipality, and you will be able to repeatedly evaluate I'm not talking about square footage, I'm not talking about height, but at least if you have your vision for a mid-rise building, and I know some of you do, but you keep looking up at land that it will not accommodate anything than a single family house, you're really wasting your time. So this would be one aspect of the process. And while I'm talking about land use planning, I saw really a lot of you are from municipal teams, which made me very, very happy, and I understand where it's coming from. I wanted to share about one request maybe, and this is kind of a side anecdote, but I've been reviewing in the last year a lot of RFPs that coming from municipalities releasing land. This is work that we did for the region of Durham. It's about to be released, but the region of Durham hired, specifically in this case, us, but that's not the point, to come up with the community needs assessment, alternatives to the site, and we got the site rezoned. And I've seen different ways that municipalities are doing it. And once you work with nonprofits, the highest and best use of the site is not necessarily what they will build eventually, because of cost, because of low-hanging fruit, because of whatever reasons. And not doing the work in advance and zoning the site and just opening it to the wild west of applications, you are, I believe, getting a wider spectrum than you anticipated, and you're also wasting the time of the nonprofits. And yes, I've seen it on both sides. So if any municipality here is listening to me right now and would like to schedule a call just to learn how the process that we have done with the region of Durham, that I think is much more respectful to the nonprofits, I'll be more than happy to meet with your team. I just wanted to share that when I saw all the list of attendees for today's webinar. So coming back to my second consideration for when you get nonprofit housing built, and that is the building code. The Ontario Building Code, I'm really giving you like a very simplified version right now, has Part 9, which is simple, and Part 3, which is complex. The definition between what triggers the Part 3 and a Part 9 building to become Part 3 is when the building is more than 3 stories in height above grade. So 3 stories and a half a basement is still Part 9, but 4 stories above grade is Part 3. And the building area, which is the footprint exceeding 600 square meters. I am saying this because switching from Part 9 to Part 3 will have a lot of implications on your cost from a fire safety, from accessibility requirements, from HVAC, mechanical and electrical systems. And as I said, if I work with private sector developers, the highest and best use of the site, meaning the maximum density that you could achieve, is most likely what the private sector developer will be after. When I work from my experience with nonprofits, it's not always the case. First of all, not always they can serve, if a building comes in with 100 units, not always they have the ability and capacity to serve new 100 tenants. Or from different reasons of costing, they might not be able to get the funding. So in the case of 1120 Ossington, fairly quickly, we understood that the building is going to be under Part 9, which we designed it to be 3 stories and slab on grade to also make the construction much simpler. But it's something that you need to be aware, and I wanted you to be aware of what is the trigger. And the last thing is you need to come to your architect with a very good understanding of your end users' needs, because what we learned in this case in St. Clair, and let me show you, I'll show you the plans in a moment, but the 1120 Ossington building is introduced 25 micro units. Where's the micro unit coming from? Because when we did interviews, we realized fairly quickly that people who experience homelessness would rather have the smallest, no matter how small it is, space to close the door behind them and have privacy rather than share a space, which is understandable. But I really needed that input from my client. So you need to know who is your end user. If it's more geared towards families or female who might suffer from domestic abuse and have children and they're looking for shelter. So it's really different because it really is impacting the design from the early stages. Also the social programming and amenities if you need them. So I wanted to kind of walk you through what we have in 1120 Ossington, which is, again, if you need to know the colors, remember I told you a few slides ago, the color, the land use designation of this property is yellow. I already know that this is not going to be a fully mid-rise building, no matter even if the site was larger. And I specifically didn't go into the dimensions of the site because I am assuming that you will, as an organization, look for larger properties. So you already see, just from knowing the color, that this will be limited in height. It will need to be more in a low-rise scale. The other thing that in here, I just wanted to show you that it's, and maybe Lee will speak to that as well, but we had an existing building on the site. This church was already converted to affordable housing over 10 years ago, and we had an infill opportunity. And this is a huge thing for nonprofits. Look right under your nose. You might own land already that has surface parking, that has just surplus land that you are just not used properly, right? And this infill, yes, it was tight. It was a little piece of grass and some surface parking here that introduced the opportunity for this infill. So what we did was 3 stories. We have a small courtyard with soft landscape between the new building and the existing affordable housing. You can see it here in the plan. This L-shaped building that I just showed you, that was the existing building. And we still have this soft landscape courtyard in between. And this building is a single loaded corridor that the corridor is external. I do want to say, and maybe I'll put it in the chat, that next week, right before the building is getting its full occupancy, we're hosting a tour. And I would love for everyone here, I'll put this link in the chat. If you can join us, there are 3 times for the different tour because it's very limited in place. But if you're interested in coming and seeing the building, I would love for you to come and join us. And I think I covered everything. I think this is my last slide. So with that, over to you. Let me stop sharing and over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Naama. I'll share my screen. Thank you, everybody, for joining and the great presentations so far. My name is Lee Scott. I'm the Director of Sales for Element 5 in North America. Everybody can see my screen there. So I wanted to bring mass timber perspective to the conversation and talk about how we can do affordable housing sustainably and cost-effective at the same time. So promote healthier living spaces for people and have an environmentally friendly product that we're offering. So I think mass timber is a unique product that it's so popular that it has so many benefits to so many different project stakeholders and the end user. One of the most obvious benefits, I think, is the aesthetic or the biophilic benefits that you are achieved through using mass timber. Some photos of our Blockline Road project in Kitchener showing the warm living spaces, the communal areas, even the exposed wood in the hallways. Because mass timber is able to achieve the fire rating of the building inherently with the wood, we're able to leave that exposed and to use less other finished products. The carbon equation is also a very important part of the mass timber offering for sustainability, because the mass timber sequesters carbon, and also it is less carbon intensive to harvest trees and get them to site and produce the building than otherwise using concrete or steel. We're able to promote a sustainable product here, typically between 25 and 50% less embodied carbon than a conventional building. The strength to weight ratio of wood is also quite advantageous. So we're able to build buildings with less foundations, so less concrete in the foundations. We're able to build taller sometimes on geotechnical site classes that wouldn't sustain a concrete building. That implies less soil remediation that's needed to be done and increased seismic performance. We're also able to add stories to existing buildings. So this is a great example that we just completed in Peel region, where we added 2 stories to an existing concrete building. And I think that's something that we'll try to utilize more and more as it comes up. Probably one of the most tangible benefits of mass timber is saving on the construction schedule. So if we're planning these projects properly, as the site work is going on and the concrete foundations are being done, we're actually manufacturing that building offsite in our facility. We're basically building a digital twin of the project right down to the last screw. So all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing penetrations, all of those are coordinated beforehand, and all those penetrations are cut in our factory. So that allows the trades to get to site, and there's less decisions made on site, less site instructions, less RFIs, a little bit less bureaucracy, so the trades are able to get in there and fit out the building extremely quick. There's also a lot less formwork, shoring. It's a very clean and quiet site, so it enables the trades to get in there very quickly and fit out the building. Obviously, there's less interior finishes as well. So if you're leaving the wood exposed, that's a huge benefit for less drywall and other finishing crews on site, which take time. But those overall construction savings, those translate into interest savings. They translate into generating revenue quicker when you're getting the building leased up and your tenants in there quicker. Less general condition expenses for the site. You've got less equipment rentals. All of those really compile into an overall construction savings on the overall project budget. So you're not just looking at material costs when you're comparing mass timber to other approaches. You really have to look at the project holistically and add up all of those additional savings to really get a true value of what the mass timber project is costing compared to other approaches. So Element 5, we are located in St. Thomas, Ontario. We have an office downtown Toronto, but our manufacturing facility is down in St. Thomas. When we started, we broke ground on this in 2019. It's a 140,000 square foot facility. We have 2 fully automated production lines in the facility, one for CLT. We make about 50,000 cubic meters of CLT per year. That translates into about 2 million square feet of floor plate when utilizing a 5-ply standard CLT floor plate. Our glulam production, which is the 2 products complement each other quite well for a mass timber offering, was on the lesser side, about 5,000 cubic meters. So that actually pushed us to either buy off the market or work with some European manufacturers. So that developed a relationship with Hochschlager. Hochschlager is an Austrian firm, a family-based company started in 1904, highly regarded as one of the best mass timber manufacturers in the world. They have 14 factories over in Europe, and they've made a significant investment in Element 5 for our expansion that is going on right now. So we're taking our current 140,000 square foot facility, and we've added significant square footage to it. We're putting a mass timber office on the front. We're adding additional areas for CNC, so that's actually cutting up the panels and the glulam beams that we're making. Some extra room for shipping. We've added a lumber grading and sorting facility that you see there in the back. It's about a 50,000 square foot building. It'll just be taking the commodity lumber that we get from our mills and sorting it and regrading it to get more utility out of the lumber that we're getting. So hopefully that translates into cost savings for our customers. And we've added a new glulam line. So taking our glulam production from about 5,000 cubic meters per year to 50,000 cubic meters per year. So a very highly evolved, high volume, high capacity glulam line going in right now. And we're going to be making some of those glulam beams very shortly here. So pretty exciting. We've also added this mass timber canopy and storage area. And you can see the beautiful glulam beams that we brought over from Austria. Some of these beams are about 60 to 80 feet long and up to 9 feet deep. So they're a specialized fish belly beam to help with this covered canopy area. So we've gone from 140,000 square feet to about 400,000 square feet at the St. Thomas facility, making us one of the largest mass timber manufacturing facilities in North America. So exponential growth in the industry, exponential growth at Element 5, all fueled by a great design community and people's affinity to have these healthy spaces for clients. So what can we build and what should we build? We want to be very careful about our approach here for mass timber. The Ontario Building Code allows us to go up to 6 stories and pretty much fully expose the timber. At 6 stories and below, we usually fall within a 1-hour fire rating, and typically the mass timber will achieve that 1-hour fire rating inherently. It's not the structurally governing factor, so it's very easy to design within a 1-hour fire rating with our products. When you go beyond the 6 stories, it's an important threshold to consider. So like Nama said, some developers want to really maximize the performa, and maybe they want to go from 6 to 7 or 8. We can do that. You just have to really consider the structural design approach, because now fire probably is governing, and the code changes a little bit where you are actually, the code dictates that you need to encapsulate some of that mass timber, most of it actually with 2 layers of Type X drywall. We can expose it, but you're going to go through an alternative building solution with the authority having jurisdiction, which is not a huge onerous process, but it is just something to consider. In Ontario, we can actually go up to 18 stories now, and we're happy to say at Element 5, we've got some 12-story buildings coming up under contract that are quite beautiful. One of our first affordable housing projects, actually was the Blockline Road project in Kitchener. It's about a 23,000 square foot, 41 unit women's shelter with the YW. And you can see here we had an all CLT approach. So the facade is CLT. Those are 4-story tilt-up panels with punch windows. The whole facade envelope on that building went up in about a day and a half. The whole structure of the building went up in just 18 days. And you can see in the bottom left corner there, we built a sister building to it, which is 3 stories. It utilizes the same structural grid and structural approach, but only 3 stories. That building went up in just 9 days. So the trades were able to get in there and fit out that building. I think on this building, we went from concept design to occupied in just over 13 months. So a very aggressive, fast construction schedule, but supported by how quickly these timber buildings go up. There's a little bit closer look at the 3-story building. You can see the panels there for the floor plates. Those are 5-ply CLT panels, and they span 2 structural bays. So we like to design in, and I'll talk a little bit more about the structural grid and how important it is. But if we can get a 2-span continuous panel, so we've got about a 10-foot wide panel by about somewhere between 36 and 40 feet long, that's what enables you to put up that floor plate so quickly. You can see here the elevator cores, stair cores, unit demising walls, everything on this building is CLT. Now, for one of our subsequent projects after that, we took the same structural approach, went down to 2 stories, and we built this passive house building in East Willenbury. Now, we were able to get a building permit set, structural drawing set very quickly, because we were utilizing the previous work that we'd done on the past projects and maintaining that same sort of modular structural grid approach. The same approach we've used in Hamilton. So we just topped out earlier, I guess late last year, on this 6-story building. But again, this utilizing that same really efficient structural grid, but going up to 6 stories. So some of the connection design changes because of the lateral force resisting system. You get a little bit more wind and seismic forces that you're dealing with. But again, just harnessing that same approach for design and having it as efficient as possible, and typical bays all the way up to really keep costs down for the timber approach. Now, there's a few different ways to get mass timber in your building. It doesn't have to be a full mass timber building, and sometimes utilizing different products for different uses is the right approach to really sharpen the pencil and get a cost-effective building. What we've seen recently on a lot of projects that we've done is utilizing prefabricated stud walls, so light wood frame walls, as the vertical structure, so those load-bearing walls, and still utilizing CLT as the floor plate. So cross-laminated timber is extremely efficient as a horizontal floor plate and roof plate, and you're still harnessing a lot of the value of mass timber. You're still getting massive panels, so 10-foot by 40-foot panels being put in every 15 minutes with a crane. So you can think, if you're putting 400 square feet in every 10 to 15 minutes with a crane, a crew can easily put 10 to 15,000 square feet of floor plate in a single day. Now you're utilizing a stud wall system, which is maybe saving you on material, but it's still prefabricated off-site, so you're not losing any of that rapid install, and also a little bit easier to run your mechanical and electrical through the stud wall. So kind of getting the best of both worlds. I really like this approach. We've done it on the Franklin Flats project in Kitchener with the Maxwell Building Consultant firm and ABA Architects. These are 4 buildings. The first one we did, the construction developer wanted a data point, so he'd never done mass timber before. They left the roof as conventional TJI joists. It took them 10 full working days to put on the roof. Every other mass timber floor plate was 1 day, and then they were standing walls the next day. So they could really see the benefit of the construction schedule savings by switching from TJIs to mass timber. Although TJIs are a little bit cheaper than a CLT panel, that construction schedule savings translated into a really cost-effective project, and that developer we've done several more buildings with them. So proof is in the pudding on these buildings, and you really get some beautiful results there, as you can see in the picture on the right. We've taken this approach into student housing. We put up 4 buildings in Golden, Colorado, about 300,000 square feet. We put up these buildings simultaneously with this lightwood frame CLT hybrid approach, and it's worked extremely well. So really utilizing the best of both worlds for materials working out for us. Some of the major design considerations you really want to consider are the structural grid. So unlike concrete or steel, when you get outside ideal design parameters for mass timber, the cost can go up exponentially. So it's really important to lock down your structural grid and be fully utilizing the most cost-effective panel for your manufacturer. So for Element 5, a 175 millimeters, so about 7 inches thick floor plate at a V2 grade SPF, so we utilize spruce, Ontario spruce, is a really cost-effective way to design your floor plate. And you want to have an even number of structural bays, so we're always in that 2-span continuous condition. So architecture is very important, but really working the architecture around an ideal structural grid is the most important way to have a cost-effective mass timber product. And so this is the ideal structural grid for a 1-hour fire rated building. If you want to go to 2 hours, we can do that, but we may need to shorten the structural grid a little bit and increase the strength grade of the CLT if we want to leave that exposed. So like I said, it's that threshold between 1 hour and 2 hours that you really need to consider early. So the goal here is to have an adaptable approach where we can take that same structural grid and really fit it to the site constraints to get the most out of the site. So Element 5 products and services. We're a full service firm. We like to come in early and really help the architect and engineer of record and the whole consultant team with our feedback and knowledge and experience, so you're getting the most cost-effective building. Also, that helps with scheduling and working within our lead times to make sure that we're planning properly so that when that concrete is finished, we can swoop right in and start erecting the timber on site. So we've got a great team of design consultants, cost consultants to help you with budgeting, early design considerations. We can come on as a design assist partner to really streamline the whole process. We have full mass timber engineering. We have about 18 structural engineers on staff now, but we're not here to be consultants. We're here to just empower the project to be successful. So typically we end up with some delegated design for connections, or we can help out with member sizing or the lateral system. All of these things that get us ready to manufacture the building, and then we work with our preferred partners to erect it. As I was saying, our CLT panels, they come in all shapes and sizes, but really just rectangles. So when you deviate from a rectangle, you can create some wastage. So just understanding the geometry of the building is important to keep it cost effective, and just working within your manufacturer's ideal strength grades and sizes. We make our panels up to 11.5 feet wide, but really for shipping, you want to keep it around 10 feet wide to keep your shipping costs down. And we make our panels up to 52 feet long, and they go anywhere from 3.5 inches to all the way over a foot thick. Glulam is another component. We're expanding on our Glulam lines. We're going to be offering spruce pine Glulam as well as Douglas fir in all shapes and sizes, just rectangles again, really. And just some of our services, we can come in and help with the structural detailing, 3D modeling. Like I said, we're building a digital twin of the building, working with the consultants and presenting that design to everybody to make sure all the mechanical penetrations, electrical and plumbing are all in the right spot. So then when it gets to site, everything fits together perfectly. Once we have those approved shop drawings, we are going to fabricate it at our building in St. Thomas and start marshaling it to site in the correct sequence, working with the installer to make sure it's going up as efficiently as possible. So I think I'm just right on the nose of time here. So there's my contact information. And yeah, highly encourage everybody to reach out. And if you've got a project in mind, we're here to help from an early stage, and look forward to hearing from everybody. Thanks so much for your time.